Good morning, everyone. My name is Alfred Cromwell, and I first want to welcome you to the channel if you are new to the channel. This is a math channel, but I also like to occasionally, and on Sundays sometimes also, on Sundays I give a Sunday moral message, but occasionally I also like to discuss things that I'm noticing are affecting particularly our young people. And because the majority, well, everyone almost this year at City Tutoring is between the ages of 18 and about 25, I really am going to, this message is for you. And I have to say, I confess that I am hesitant to tell you. I have to say it that way. I am very hesitant to tell you what I'm about to tell you. Not for lack of conviction, but because throughout my life, I found that truth, like vinegar, offends palates raised on sugar. And men and women today spit it out like children rejecting medicine they need to live. So, if you'll allow me to invoke an art that is far older and more incisive than your influencers and social therapists or theorists, whatever they want to call themselves. The art of disillusionment, not cynicism, not despair, not the ancient discipline of tearing away appearances to see the bone of things. I had a dream recently, and unlike so many people, I did not go back to sleep. I woke up. I realized I wanted to share with you the thoughts from my dream because, like Dante, I ventured into hell momentarily and found it quite familiar. But unlike Dante, I did not need Virgil to guide me because I recognized the place. Its corridors were lit by iPhone screens, flames that were stoked by hashtags, and the demons had the stench, that repulsive stench of merchants. And so I returned with, I woke up early, really early this morning, actually. It was 4:30 in the morning. And so I returned with something to tell you, if you have the stomach to hear it. I am not here to flatter you. This is not a pep talk. This won't be another a dopamine squirt. I don't come to soothe, but to sever something, to part the veil, to make you stare. Yes, I said stare, until your eyes water and your illusions die. I'm not here to soothe your carefully groomed delusions. I'm here to drag them into the street, sort of, if I could. And if I could do that, I would beat them until they bleed, until your pride blisters, your comforts scream, and the soft lies that you've suckled since childhood finally die, as they must if you are ever to live. You are not weak. You have been targeted. Lied to, yes, but not by accident. You were deceived because you matter, because you are dangerous if awakened. And here it is. All you young people, the one thing your influencers cannot sell, your therapists won't mention, and of course your professors, and some of them still dare call themselves that, they are too spineless to teach. And it's, again, let me repeat the word. Some of you have never heard of this word. You don't understand the meaning. Disillusionment. Not the brand safe version. The real thing. It's harsh. It's ugly. It's unbranded. Truth with its mask ripped off and its fists raised. You see, you live in an age that is drunk on illusion. Your world is a gilded madhouse. It flatters your rage while neutering your reason. It baptizes delusion in the name of self expression and canonizes stupidity and spiritual illness as authenticity. You were promised freedom, but they feared what you might become if you truly tasted it. So they drugged you, and instead you were handed a buffet of sedatives for your soul, antidepressants for your sorrow, pornography for the men, and validations of lies. This was no accident. You are not living through a crisis, you are living through a program. And the tragedy is not that you are lost in it, The tragedy is that you've been taught to love your leash. And this is why so many of you chase after jobs, not because a paycheck is all you want, but because no one taught you what it really means to live. I said it in my previous speech about this. You don't need a job. You need a life worth living. It's a variation of the old get a life. A life anchored not in fleeting distractions or endless busyness, but I'm talking about a life of purpose, discipline, and divine truth. Because without that, all the credentials and paychecks in the world are just tokens for a life that's still empty. You do not have a life. And what did I see in hell in my dream? Well, I saw the usual peddlers of piety soaked in hypocrisy. I saw merchants, by the way, dancing with their father Judas. And they were pleased. This is what I remember from the dream. They were pleased not to be punished, actually, but delighted to be in the company of the most successful Jewish trader, no pun intended, in history, the man who sold God, the most successful Jewish broker in all of history, Judas. He sold God for coin, 30 pieces of silver. I also saw astrologers in lunatic reverie, professors that were, it was actually, I shouldn't say it's a dream, it was a nightmare. But it was a very realistic nightmare because it was very similar to the real world. I saw professors poisoning their pupils with useless diplomas rather than truths. And justice itself was poured out like an alley strumpet to serve tyrants. And all of it not in fantasy, but as a mirror. Every corridor of that place was packed with people. And yet it all looked so lonely at the same time. Everyone was shouting, but no one listened. It felt like a nightclub. Everyone thought they had a friend. But in reality, all they had was a shared experience. Aristotle, and many of you don't even know the classics. You haven't been taught the classics. You have no education at all. But Aristotle once said that true friendship is built on not shared experience, but shared speech. That conversation, logos, in the ancient Greek, is the soul's common ground, the word. That's why the Christian is to preach the word. But how can there be friendship in a place where noise killed all dialogue? Where the meaningful inner life is outsourced to disgusting, satanic, syncopated music. And you ask me, what does this have to do with me? Right? What does this have to do with you, Gen Z, Gen Alpha even, of the 21st century? Everything. Because in my dream, I saw hell. But you live in it. You were born in it. We should begin with the farce that is college life. You strut about your campuses as if knowledge were something that seeps through the pores somehow while you recline on beanbags. You borrow thousands upon thousands of dollars, usury, by the way, not to master the disciplines that shaped civilization, but to memorize sterile phrases from thin volumes, no better. They're really pamphlets, and they're no better than extended social media posts. All these silly PowerPoint presentations. You tweet your rage, you TikTok your virtue, and you Instagram your breakfasts, all chemically laden, by the way, and made by people who are probably uh, in an illegal situation in the country. They're cheap labor that you exploit in a knowing sort of way. Maybe not even knowingly. Maybe just you're just ignorant. Nothing that you have is appropriate at this point. All the while, you confuse exposure with excellence and attention with achievement. But that's not learning. That is academic theater. Look at your seminars. Your seminars are not Socratic but sentimental. Your lectures are not expositions of reason but baptisms in some kind of ideology. And professors now stand as stern guardians of knowledge, not as the guardians of knowledge, but they are flatterers, seducers of the young who feed you soft lies like a nurse feeds sugar to keep the infant from crying. Every grievance is now canonized. Well, specific, not every grievance, certain grievances, the politically viable ones. Certainly not the grievance of Christians. Every feeling is now considered the truth. You are taught to believe in yourselves before you've achieved the least thing worth believing in. Do you not feel the insult of this? Have you ever stopped to think just how defrauded you are, how they are committing fraud against you? Your colleges and universities do not educate; they credentialize. That's all they do. Your entertainment does not amuse; it sedates. Politics do not govern; it performs. Whether it be Democrat or Republican, all we have is a performance. Nothing really is getting done. Your identities are not chosen; they're assigned now, like astrological signs by bureaucrats in rainbow livery. You were told you could be anything. You became nothing. The vast majority of people will become nothing. You were promised liberation. You received instead the micro tyrannies that they call of feelings. You were assured, they told you would find yourselves, and instead you found algorithms that were so flattering to you. You forgot you even had a self to search for. I am just reminded now of an incident back in the 1990s. I was asked by a lady, she said, do you go to church to find yourself? And I remember I was only 17 years old at the time. This was many, many decades ago. And I said to her, well, I haven't lost myself. What does that even mean, finding yourself? It's ridiculous. So let me speak plainly. Idealism in your generation is the most seductive narcotic since opium. It numbs you to reality while convincing you that you are ascending. You call it changing the world, but many of you have never even changed a tire. Please. What world are you going to change? You can't even change anything in your own life. You parade slogans about justice, equality, and identity, all the while blind to the ancient truth that the first justice a man must render is to himself. And it is the justice of being honest about his own mediocrity. So you're not encouraged. The crux of the matter is that you're not encouraged to grow. You are encouraged to remain petulant little children, infant emperors of your little online realms, where every micro opinion is celebrated and every criticism, pushback against you is violence. That's not education, it is a perversion of it. You are being bred not for greatness, but for compliance. And you are trained to be complicit, especially the men, in your own emasculation. So disillusionment is not a tragedy. It is not an affliction. It is not your enemy. It is your coronation. You see, only in disillusionment does a child become an adult. Only through the wreckage of belief does the soul begin to build not castles in the sky, but fortresses in the earth. Your educators did not teach you this. They preferred you docile. They fed you Rousseau, the Frenchman. Rousseau, God damn him. And they omitted St. Augustine and St. Aquinas, doctors of the church. They gave you empathy without boundaries, freedom without ballast, and therapy without sin. So let me correct their errors. The world is not your friend. It is not your canvas. It is not your safe space. It is a war zone of illusions, a boulevard of hypocrisy lined with brothels selling meaning by the click. And in this grand whorehouse of modernity, every virtue has its price. Courage is traded for clout, masculinity for marketability, and truth itself for your truth. That insipid counterfeit whose only virtue is that it never disagrees with you. You have been infected with what the ancients called fantasia. Not abstract thinking, which is noble, but delusion. You believe in living your truth as if truth were a boutique item, tailored to the whims of your mood. You believe suffering is a glitch, not the price of existence. You believe you are entitled to happiness before you've earned honor. And worst of all, you have made feelings the final court of reality. And that is the fundamental characteristic of the 21st century, of the era in which we live. The 21st century has placed reason below freedom. Or to put it another way, for the past 2 centuries, our Western societies have placed freedom above reason. And human beings have been led to believe that their possibilities and their rights to exercise freedom are above any rational reproach. And this is a huge error because it can lead human beings to believe they can fly simply by moving their arms. In other words, the freedom to fly cannot be beyond reason. In order to fly, human beings need to develop devices that allow them to overcome the law of gravity. The law of gravity is not resolved simply by moving our arms. We are not capable of that. So be very careful about believing in the error that freedom is above the possibilities of human reason, because that is a shortcut to failure. But all is not lost, because there is a map out of the inferno. The path is not wide, it's not fashionable, it's not easy, it's called reason. I'm not talking about the neutered, state-sponsored reason of bureaucrats, but the fire-forged intellect of Aquinas and the classical European mind. Reason and faith, above feeling, above fashion, reason as sword and shield. This is the tradition that dares to say your feelings may be real to you, but they are not truth. That declares if you feel like an alien, you do not become one. No matter how many forms you fill out, or how many liars and frauds around you play along with your fantasies, including our degenerate politicians. That reminds you the world is not obligated to kneel before your pronouns, your delusions, or your traumas. So what then is the role of freedom? It is to choose. Freedom, real freedom, is to choose between good and evil, not to invent them. It is not to be boundless like a child on sugar, but to be meaningful, and meaning demands structure, just like mathematics. But structure, that's oppressive, you say. Well, then build your own chaos, and when it devours you, do not call it fate, call it freedom. What we need today is not sensitivity training, but moral training. Not equity offices, but classical academies, like city tutoring, by the way. We need young people not afraid to be serious, not embarrassed, to be Christian soldiers for God, for the honor of our ancestors, for the commonwealth of righteous glory, and not allergic to the ruthless clarity of proper judgment. And yes, I often say men, because your civilization is starving for fathers. Your generation's pain is not rooted, that the problem is not toxic masculinity, but the absence of masculinity, of strength tempered by wisdom, of authority grounded in sacrifice, and of discipline married to dignity. You may not have had such a father. Many of you are fatherless. But you may yet be such a father, whether in a family or a church father or an academic father. And that is why you must embrace disillusionment. For only a man who has been broken of lies can generate truth. Only one who has stared into the mirror and said, "This is me, unadorned, unfiltered, unfinished." Only that can stand before the world and say, "Here I stand." So, all of you disinherited children of post-modernity, I give no promises. I can only give you a solemn call. Reject comfort, reject victimhood, reject the dead end of grievance, and embrace instead the noble and ruinous beauty of reality. Walk with disillusionment as your guide, not your executioner. Let it strip you of falsehoods until the truth remains. It will hurt, it will leave scars, but those are the only marks worth bearing. The world has enough clownish entertainers. Be tutors. The world has enough victims. Be judges. And the world has enough brands. So be what God made you to be. Thank you all.